Religious groups keep quoting Genesis to say God made us vegetarians. But the Hebrew text says something completely different. In fact, the word God used means putting your foot on the neck of a conquered animal. Let me show you what your English Bible has been hiding all along. Hi everyone, my name is Marc Bates. I'm a metabolic health coach, and this is part of my Roasting Sacred Cows of Nutrition. This is the big biblical diet myth, why Genesis never mandated vegetarianism. Okay, let me just get this out front. I am a Christian. I have been, I've gone to seminary, I have been teaching, and I've been specializing in Hebrew interpretation for over 2 decades. Okay, so the most persistent biblical misinterpretation I always encounter involves dietary laws, and religious groups of various kinds and Christians routinely will cite Genesis to support a vegetarian theology, and they're reading the text backwards. So let's get into it. And if you're not a Christian and you don't care about the Bible, thank you very much, but you might find this interesting. So go ahead and keep going with us. The Genesis 2:16 trap, right? So most people anchor their vegetarian argument on Genesis 2:16. God commanded Adam about tree consumption in the garden. Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. This passage becomes their proof text. They interpret it as divine vegetarian mandate. The problem lies in their exegetical methodology. They're working backwards from Genesis 2 instead of understanding the progression from Genesis 1. Genesis 1 establishes the foundation dietary framework. Genesis 2 provides specific garden instructions. Okay? So here's how Hebrew actually reveals the truth. In Genesis 1:28, it contains the critical Hebrew word that destroys the vegetarian interpretations. God told humanity to subdue the earth and have dominion over animals. The Hebrew word translated as subdue is KABASH. And English translations sanitize this word's meaning. KABASH literally means to place your foot on the neck of your conquered enemy, signifying submission. The word carries violent connotations. It includes definitions of bondage, violation, and taking by force. Biblical scholars acknowledge that dominion and subdue are harsh words with violent overtones that cannot be easily translated away from their forceful meanings. KABASH appears frequently in contexts involving food acquisition. The word specifically includes subduing animals for consumption. Okay? So context determines the meaning. In Genesis 1:28-29 provides the complete dietary framework. God grants dominion over animals, then immediately discusses food provision. Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Right? KABASH the fish, KABASH the birds, KABASH every living thing that moves on the earth. The sequence matters. Dominion over animals precedes dietary instructions. Genesis 2:16 addresses a specific situation where Adam, which is a Hebrew word that just means mankind, receives garden-specific instructions about tree consumption. The subject isn't universal dietary restriction. God establishes an exception regarding one particular tree. People mistake this exception for comprehensive dietary law. They ignore the broader Genesis 1 context that established human authority over animals. So let's go through this real quick. Progressive revelation will confirm this interpretation. The Noah narrative validates the understanding. After the flood, God reissues similar commands to Noah and his descendants. Genesis 9 provides explicit dietary permissions, with Genesis 9:3-5 stating, "Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. Like plant vegetation, I have now given you everything." God gives Noah identical instructions to those given in Genesis 1. The same sequence appears: dominion over animals, then dietary permissions. This time, God explicitly includes animals as food sources. The progression clarifies the original intent. If Genesis 1 mandated vegetarianism, why would God need to permit meat consumption after the flood? The permission implies various previous allowance, not new authorship. All right? And linguistic evidence overcomes English limitations. Most Americans never study Hebrew, unless you're one of these great gentlemen who are studying the Torah a um, in a yeshiva, which is a Jewish seminary, right? Or maybe at synagogue. You probably don't have a lot of acquaintance with Hebrew, quite honestly, right? And these people argue when I present Hebrew linguistic evidence, right, that the English translations don't support violent interpretations of dominion. This resistance demonstrates the problem. English translations often soften Hebrew meanings to avoid uncomfortable implications. KABASH loses its forceful meaning in English rendering. Subdue sounds gentler than place your foot on the enemy's neck, right? Context provides additional clarity. The same Hebrew roots appear in military conquest passages throughout Scripture. Hebrew linguistic patterns remain consistent. Words don't change meaning based on modern sensibilities. There are theological implications of dominion. The dominion mandate establishes humanity's unique position in creation. Humans receive authority over animal life that other creatures lack. This authority includes life and death decisions. The Hebrew text supports this interpretation through its violent vocabulary. Vegetarian theology undermines this biblical anthropology. It reduces human authority to mere caretaking rather than genuine dominion. The distinction matters theologically. Dominion implies responsibility with authority. Caretaking suggests service without power. But biblical dominion includes stewardship responsibilities. Humans must exercise authority wisely, not abandon it entirely. Okay? The sacrificial system as well confirms animal use. Even before Noah, biblical characters used animals for religious purposes. Abel offered animal sacrifices in Genesis 4:4. If God mandated vegetarianism, why would he accept animal sacrifices? The practice demonstrates that animal death served divine purposes from creation's beginning. Noah also offered animal sacrifices immediately after leaving the ark. God's acceptance of these offerings confirms their appropriateness. The sacrificial system required animal death. This system operated before any explicit meat-eating permissions in Genesis 9. Vegetarian interpretation cannot account for this biblical pattern. Animal use for divine purposes preceded explicit dietary permissions. Okay? And hermeneutical principles matter. Right? Hermeneutical is the science of interpretation. Proper biblical interpretation requires systematic methodology. Context determines meaning more than isolated verses. Genesis 2:16 interpretation violates basic hermeneutical principles. It isolates one verse from its broader narrative context. Sound exegesis moves from general to specific. Genesis 1 provides general principles. Genesis 2 offers specific applications. The garden represented a unique environment with particular rules. These rules don't necessarily apply to post-garden existence. Remember, Genesis 1 did not occur in the garden. Okay? Progressive revelation clarifies earlier passages. Later biblical texts help interpret earlier ones. The Noah narrative serves this clarifying function for Genesis 1 and 2. It demonstrates how dominion principles apply in practice. Modern applications. The exegetical analysis has practical implications for contemporary Christian living. Dietary choices become matters of wisdom rather than moral obligation. Christians can choose vegetarian diets for health, environmental or personal reasons. They cannot claim biblical mandate for these choices. The distinction preserves Christian freedom. Biblical authority supports multiple dietary approaches with dominion principles. Stewardship responsibilities remain important. Humans must exercise dominion wisely, considering animal welfare and environmental impact. Okay? The Hebrew evidence provides clarity without eliminating personal choice. It corrects theological error while preserving practical flexibility. So, in conclusion, Hebrew Linguistics demolished vegetarian interpretation of Genesis. The word KABASH carries violent connotations that English translations obscure. Contextual reading supports this conclusion. Genesis 1 establishes dominion principles that Genesis 2 doesn't contradict. Progressive revelation through Noah's story confirms the interpretation. God explicitly permits meat consumption using identical language patterns. Proper hermeneutical methodology requires this conclusion. Context, linguistics, and progressive revelation all point toward human authority over animal life. Christians can make informed dietary choices based on accurate biblical interpretation. The text supports dominion with responsibility, not vegetarian mandate. This understanding preserves both biblical authority and Christian freedom. It corrects common misinterpretation while maintaining practical wisdom in dietary decisions. So, thanks for watching, everyone. If you have comments, let me know. If you're a Christian or not Christian, and you thought something was interesting here, let me know, and ask me to expand upon it. We are a community here. I've had a couple people ask me to comment on this, so that's why I did this video. So if there's something you're looking for, let me know. I'm here to help. Make sure you have the answers you want. And as always, please, if you haven't done so, like and subscribe to our channel and share this with somebody who might need it. It helps the channel a great deal, and you'll be helping a lot of people in the meantime. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.